counsel?
She's not out there, judges, nobody in the hallway.
All right, thank you. I may. I do. She's out there.
Okay, good, thanks.
All right, court is gonna call night mag number, if I can have a prosecutor. Court's gonna call night mag number 761-818, State of Texas versus Ruth Trevino. For the state.
Marjorie, hello for the state.
All right, this hearing was actually scheduled at 9 a.m. We're here because the defendant failed to enroll in the ignition interlock. And this has actually been reset twice for a hearing. The first time it was set was in May. And now we're set for today. The defendant has not made an appearance. Deputy Laura, did you make an announcement for her?
Yes, Your Honor, and she's not in the hall.
All right, state she is on a commercial line.
Yes, Your Honor, at this time, we would ask for a bond forfeiture.
All right, that will be granted and the defendant will be remanded without bond.
Thank
And
you.
if she makes an appearance, the court will reconsider.
Thank you.
Are the parties ready on Joshua Mackie?
We're ready, Judge.
All right, who's the attorney? The prosecutor?
It was Sam Violence. I was dealing with Zach. Not brother.
Ran to the rent. We'll see.
All right, court is calling 2024 CR 5495, State of Texas versus Joshua Mackie. Can I have parties announced for the record to the state?
Marjorie, hello for the state.
Defense?
Kelly Piddle.
And are you Joshua Mackie?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we're here on a motion to set bond. Defense?
Judge, I have an agreed B page from last week with Zach Dunn for a bond amount of $10,000. I can present that before.
Oh, so why does he not have a bond?
Because you told us to bring him into
No, I mean, why was there a bond? Was there never a bond issued for him or?
no, it's an MTR.
So it's a motion to revoke.
Correct. Motion to enter adjudication.
All right, so you're on deferred adjudication and you are entitled to a bond. All right. What can you tell me about your client?
Judge, he has been on probation for roughly 9 years. This is his first MTR. And he lives in Harris County with his mother.
And state, what bond are you requesting?
Your Honor, I believe Zach was in agreement with I'm gonna say 10. It's 10,000.
Oh, any conditions with that?
We would ask that he continue abiding by his conditions of probation, including any kind of no contact orders that are in place based on the offense.
All right, and what are the alleged allegations in the motion? Does anyone know?
I do, Judge. You want to see a copy of the MTR?
Yes.
Approach.
Yes. Oh, so is he in Harris County?
Correct, Judge.
All right, and who is Lozano? It says. What is Lozano?
I'm not sure, Judge. Can I see it?
Lazona. Is that a club or something?
I would assume so, Judge.
Anybody know? What Lozano is or Lozana?
It's a nightclub, Judge. An after hours club.
All right, and is that located in Harris County?
I just Googled it, Judge. It does look like it's located in Houston, Texas. I can give you the address.
Oh, no address needed.
Okay.
Is anyone requesting GPS?
Your Honor, I'm not sure if they were a part of his conditions of probation. If he's been on probation for 9 years and this is his first violation, I'm just not. I'm not certain enough of the facts to know exactly whether it's.
All right, oh, Zach is present. Zach Don,
Yes.
so for
I
the
knew I'd be
record,
caught eventually.
for the record, Zach Don. All right, with regards to this case involving Joshua Mack, is there going to be a request for GPS?
For GPS, Your Honor, yes, I know yes, agreed to a reduction from the original amount, if I'm not mistaken, counsel. But
The agreement was to set the bond at $10,000 with no conditions, Judge. That was the agreement we reached between myself and the state.
All right, can you raise your right hand for me, please? You solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes,
All right, could you state your name for the record?
Joshua Mackie.
All right, are you employed?
No,
So, counsel said that you were staying
I
with your
do.
mom?
Yeah.
How long have you been unemployed?
Well, I'm on disability,
For what?
brain injury.
Judge, about 12 years ago, he was shot in the head and suffered a TBI. So he receives SSI.
All right, this is what I'm going to do. Court is gonna follow your agreement for a $10,000 bond. There's to be no contact with Lozano. Lazona. I'm gonna order partial GPS for medical appointments only. And there's gonna be a curfew with that GPS. And it's Monday through Friday. Well, actually, there needs to be no curfew added because I'm only allowing it for medical appointments. If there's some other reason that he needs to leave, you can let the court know. I'm gonna order that GPS be installed. No later than June 24th. By 5 p.m. Is there anything else?
Do you waive fees?
I can say that I'll waive fees, but as you know, it's a third-party contractor, but I'll say waive GPS fees. And Ms. Ferguson, on this case, I need a setting for a NTR. Is it gonna be contested?
I don't believe, as counsel and I have only spoken briefly about the bond amount and the agreement therein, Your Honor, so at this point, I would need an opportunity to just kind of briefly speak with counsel at that next setting.
TBD, Judge.
Hmm?
TBD.
All right, so, Ms. Ferguson, set this in 10 days for a hearing. And at that time, you all need to let me know whether or not it's gonna be contested.
Sounds great. Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome. All right, we'll see y'all back here on June 20th. Let me know if you think about it. You're here. Oh, I'm writing. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Would you like this back, John?
Oh, no, I don't know that.
No worries. Okay, we will take it.
Catherine Aguilar. Who's the attorney? Come forward. Counsel.
Oh, hey, hey, good, how are you?
Where are we on this case?
Well, we received an offer, Judge, and the things that there's multiple, quite a few videos on this case that I've downloaded that would need to be reviewed. I am trying to ascertain whether I need to be filing a motion to suppress on this case. I mean, excuse me, speedy trial motion on this case, because even though it's a 24 case, Judge, the date of the arrest was in July of 2022. My client was charged and held in jail for 3 months and then released. And so that's what we're trying to do, Judge.
All right, we'll recall this back. Norm, can you put this for June 24th? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
As Your Honor, Judge, that if the 23rd or the 25th is available, only because my dad has I'm taking my dad to an important medical
Oh,
appointment
no
that
problem.
day.
Do you prefer the 25th?
Yeah, that would be
That's a Tuesday. Is that a good time?
that would be better.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, recall it for June 25th. June 25th would be the plea deadline date, or council, you need to have motions filed.
all right. Leave deadline. And then-
Thank
Do you have any
you.
questions?
No, not at this time. If I do have any questions, whom would I direct them to
I'll
aside
direct them to your attorney, and then you all will be back here on June 25th.
June 25th?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can I be excused? Judge?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Aguilar.
Norman, this has been signed by Jody, so that's done. And Deputy Laura, are all the jurors here?
They just arrived. Mackie, to do the
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's why you. Well. Needs to talk with Mr. Jim.
With this one?
But he's not there right now. Not again, I'm talking about when we have to open because we have to cut. Yeah, but.
Oh, 24 CL 5110.
You do, those are not real pens. You get one of these.
Oh, this is a kid?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I know, man. That's why you was happening now. Okay. I thought you were just being kind of, relax. Okay, I'm ready now. 5110, 24 CR 5110. Oh, the booking day? Oh, yeah.
for the position.
Yeah, is there more than one page? I thought there was only one page.
No, it's just, we have to go on.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, okay. What do you want? You tell me what. 2/4/24?
And then shows basically.
That sounds about right. Thank you. It's a younger member of Club Strawberry and he Hawk and Club Strawberry. He'd sit there and he'd write with a pen like this. He's Roy, okay, 124. Yeah.
just, it's like a maze wiped out. And then, you
I just wanna be
know,
far away.
Yeah.
It's like this.
Court is calling 2022 CR 1442, State of Texas versus Brandon Sierra. Can I have parties announced for the record for the state?
Zach Dunn for the state.
Defense,
Sylvia Cabasso and Christopher Romans for the
and you, Mr. Sierra,
Yes, ma'am.
are both parties ready to proceed?
State's ready, Your Honor.
defense is ready.
All right, so state you want them to wait to bring their witness in until the jury's in the box?
Yes, Judge.
All right, just have a seat.
Yes, Judge, absolutely. You mind if I briefly, within 20 seconds, confirm they're where they should be?
I have one document to give you on this waiting or the email to them. And then the attorneys that we need.
Thank you, Judge.
We'll have him, Renee? All right, that's on track.
Ready, Judge?
Okay, so yes, correct.
All right, for the jury.
I'd say call your next witness.
State calls April Vasquez, Your Honor.
It's not heavy. I don't know. I didn't know.
You raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up for members of the jury and so the reporter can hear. If you'll state your name for the records.
April Vasquez,
State.
Thank you, Your Honor. How are you today, ma'am?
as well as I can be.
Now, Ms. Vasquez, would you just briefly please mind spelling your name for the court reporter's purposes?
Yes, APRIL VASQUEZ.
Ms. Vasquez, in general terms, what do you do for a living?
I am a program director for group homes. We service individuals with IDD.
And are you from San Antonio?
I am,
And you know why we're here today?
yes.
Now, ma'am, how many children do you have?
I have 4.
And what are their names?
Gabrielle, Aiden, Leo, and Bentley.
And what are the age ranges of the 4 children?
Currently, from 10 to 17.
And who's the 17-year-old?
My daughter, Gabrielle.
And ma'am, do you happen to know an individual by the name of Brandon Sierra?
I do.
And is that individual in the courtroom here today?
He is.
Would you mind pointing this individual out by an article of clothing?
He is sitting to the right of me with a black button-up shirt, blue slacks, and brown shoes.
Your Honor, may the record please reflect that the witness has identified the defendant. Now, ma'am, how do you know Brandon Sierra?
I met Brandon and his then girlfriend, now wife, back in November, December of 2014, when I and my children moved back from Wisconsin to San Antonio. He is a friend of my brother's. My brother and Brandon worked together at Discount Tire.
Okay. So 2014, you said November 2014, is that correct?
Yes,
Is about the first time you met?
about, yes.
Okay. And you said you met him in conjunction with who again?
My brother.
And I apologize, was it then girlfriend, now wife, or
Yes.
who was the other individual?
No, then girlfriend, now wife,
And what was her name?
Jodeci.
She go by nickname?
We call her Joe sometimes.
And how often in the beginning of your acquaintanceship, if you will, with Mr. Sierra, how often would you see him?
Maybe on the weekends, not every weekend. It would be when my brother was there. They would come over to barbecue, just, social events.
And when you say come over where?
So my brother and I were currently living together. And so he would come over to our home.
And was there ever a point in time where the visits became less frequent or more frequent or?
No, I'm sorry, excuse me. Yes, they did. In 2016, they became more frequent when my brother left to basic trainings for the Navy. Both Brandon and Jodeci would come over to check on me because they knew how close I was with my brother, and it was hard for me.
And where was your brother deployed to?
I believe he was doing his basic trainings in Chicago. I'm not certain. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. No. I know if it was training or a deployment or whatnot, but okay. So post 2016, is it safe to assume the visits would then increase in frequency or?
Yes.
And so then about how often would you see them?
Maybe 2 to 3 times a month.
And with respect to their visits, again, where would you guys spend time? Inside, outside?
When we were currently living, when my brother were currently living together, even though in his deployment, I was still at that same address, they would come over there. We would be inside. Sometimes we would be outside. It would vary.
And you briefly said like barbecues, but at an
Yes.
average get together, what could one person expect to see or happen at the house?
We would just be there, all of us in the living room, myself, my children. We would be watching TV. The kids would be playing, things like that.
And was there ever a time where everyone was hanging out and one person left the group, or did everyone stay all together all the time, or was it just kind of easygoing? How would you describe
It's
the?
an easygoing time.
Now, ma'am, do you remember kind of on or about the early 2021 timeframe with respect to your relationship with Mr. Sierra?
Yes.
Did things change around that time?
Yes.
Let's go into a little bit more that time frame. Do you remember the first time you heard an allegation of sexual assault between Brandon Sierra and your daughter,
I
Gabrielle?
do.
And how did you find out? What was the first thing that happened to start this chain of events?
My daughter sent me a text message stating that she needed to speak with me.
Okay. And was that common? Was it unusual?
That was not common.
And why wasn't it common?
Because if anything, she would come to me directly and say, hey, mommy, this is going on, whether it was with school, friends. So for her to text me, put an unsettling feeling in my stomach.
And were you guys in the house at the time? Like when this text message was sent?
I was not.
You were not at the
No,
house?
sir.
Where were you at?
I was in my vehicle. I was gonna go get food for Gabrielle and her siblings. Gabrielle was in the home, in her room, at the time.
Okay, and this is
2021. Yes.
So in 2021, about how old would you say Gabrielle was?
13 or 14.
So you've left the house, you're in the car, and you get a text message, and what happens then?
I go upstairs. I did not leave the house. At this point, I'm in the vehicle in the driveway. So I get out of my vehicle and I go upstairs.
Okay, And when you go upstairs, where was Gabby?
She was in her room.
And what was the first thing she said to you upon you entering the room?
At first, she didn't say anything. She was just crying,
Like sobbing heavy?
sobbing heavy where she could not catch a breath.
And who was in the room with the two of you when you guys were talking?
Nobody.
Was anyone else at the house at the time you guys had this conversation?
Yes.
But no one was in the room.
No.
So after she gets done crying, what happened next?
I asked her, what does she need to tell me? It took her a couple of minutes. She told me, Mommy, I need you to believe me.
And why do you think she was anything in your relationship? Would that, let me rephrase. Would anything in your relationship with your daughter give context as to why she may say that to you?
Absolutely not.
And after she said that, what did she say next?
She said that Brandon touched her on her boobs and on her vajayjay, which is we refer to for vagina.
And what else did she articulate?
Said that Brandon put his penis in her mouth. He pulled down her pants. And he had sexual intercourse with her.
And when she said sexual intercourse, do you remember potentially, to the best of your recollection, the wording she used to communicate that?
She said sex.
And you understood that to mean some sort of penetrative element, or
Yes.
did you ask her what she meant by that, or, and what did you ask her?
I asked her, what do you mean? What does that mean?
And she said,
She said he put his penis in her vajayjay.
and vajayjay was just a term between mother and daughter to denote the vagina. Now, after your daughter spoke with you, well, I guess before we get there, did she communicate anything else to you?
From my recollection, I don't recall.
So after she communicates these things to you, what do you do next?
I run downstairs.
And then? What did you do next?
I wanted my gun
Why did you want your gun?
because I was gonna drive to Brandon's house.
And what were you going to do?
I don't know.
Did you do that?
No, I did not,
And why didn't you do that?
because my daughter and my other kids are all I have. And I'm the only one that they have.
From the time you ran downstairs, and it sounds like rage, to
Absolutely.
then not taking that decision, how much time would you, to the best of your guess, how long was this period of time?
Maybe 5 minutes.
And after this 5-minute time span, what did you do next?
I called the police.
And from there, did officers come by the house
They did.
and began the process of conducting their investigation?
Yes.
Just a moment of the court's time, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Ms. Vasquez.
After you.
My name is Sylvia Cavazos, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. If at any time you don't understand my question or you'd like for me to rephrase it, I'll be happy to.
It's fine.
If at any time you don't know the answer to a question, it's okay to say you don't know or you don't remember.
Yes, ma'am.
You did take an oath before testifying, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's an oath to tell the truth.
Correct.
Now, Ms. Vasquez, you testified that you were living with your brother at a residence, correct?
Correct.
What is that residence or what street? I don't need the name, the address, but just what.
Because this is
street?
on YouTube Live, I really.
She asked
would
for what
not-
this, excuse me, she asked you for the name of the street where you were previously living. You need to answer that question.
It was on Arapahoe Drive.
What's the street?
Arapahoe Drive.
Did you watch the YouTube video from yesterday's testimony?
No, ma'am.
All right, and so, at what point, because that was in 2016, when did you move?
That was 2014. From 2014 to 26, from November of 2014 to October of 2016, that was my address.
Okay.
2016 is when I moved in with my husband, then boyfriend, now husband.
Okay, and so then you lived for 2 years approximately at the first location with your brother,
Yes, ma'am.
and you had not met your husband then?
No, ma'am. I met my husband in March of 2016.
And so then you lived on Bear. The street name was Bear on
Yes, ma'am.
Ranch.
October of 2016 is when I moved.
All right. And so, so your testimony is that you became really good friends with Brandon and his wife now, right?
Correct. It wasn't just friends, it was more like family.
Okay. And in fact, you saw Brandon as like a brother, right?
Absolutely.
In fact, Enrique, and his nickname's Kike, right? Your husband.
Yes.
He would often call Brandon to come over to help him with things because he had, I guess, a foot condition, gout.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and Brandon happily would go over to help with that.
Yes.
And would you agree that Brandon would go along with his wife, Jodeci?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you agree also that they were pretty inseparable? They would come together always to your house.
Yes.
And that's just the relationship they had. They were just always together. And you were very close with April. Y'all were best friends, almost like
I
sisters.
am April.
Excuse me. Jodeci, y'all were like sisters, right?
We were.
And you had a craft, I guess, room upstairs at the
Yes,
loft
ma'am.
area.
Yes, ma'am.
And would you characterize it as your hobby
Yes.
or your job?
A hobby.
A hobby. And Jodeci would come upstairs when they would get there, because you would be upstairs and she would come see what you were doing or help you if you needed help.
If I was upstairs, yes, ma'am, she would.
And what kinds of things would you do?
Make shirts. She would help me, or we would just talk.
Would y'all make like lettering on cups and
I don't
bottles?
recall if I was making cups at that time, but I know like shirts and sort of that nature, signs. things
And
like
would you, I guess, would you sell them or was it for the school or what would you do that for?
I would sell them and gift them as well.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
all right. And so, so in that home, in that loft area, was also a game room. I guess y'all would call it a game room area.
Yes, ma'am.
And who was that made for?
For the kids.
Right, and so you mentioned only 4 children. Do you have an extended family?
I have 4 biological children and 4 stepchildren.
And at any given time, would you also have the other 4?
Yes,
And so that's a total of 8.
yes, ma'am.
Would a couple of the children sleep in the game room area?
I believe so on some nights.
And so, did you have, I guess, bedding for them there? Or would they just sleep on the couch with some,
It
sheets?
was like a futon.
Yes, all right. And in where the game room is located with the futon, because, a couple of the children would sleep there. Could you see, Gabby's room?
Yes and no.
Okay, if someone was to walk into that room and they're in the game room, could you see them walk into that room?
Yes,
Okay, in other words, it wasn't around the corner somewhere where you wouldn't see who would go there and come out.
correct.
And so, do you remember if on February 13th, if you were upstairs at the at your area, the craft room?
No, I didn't remember.
Do you remember that Jodeci had brought you some clothes to try on?
I don't believe it was that day, but I do remember her bringing me clothes, yes.
Okay, and you needed it, I guess, for an event or something, and so she bought some outfits that might fit you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so did y'all end up going to your room to try things on?
Yes, ma'am.
And Gabby also went in the room to see if there was anything that might fit her too.
I'm not sure.
And so you do recall her coming over and bringing clothes, you just don't remember if it was that day?
Correct.
So you're not telling this jury that did not happen on the 13th, right? You're just saying you don't remember.
I don't remember the date.
All right, and so on the 13th of February, do you remember who all was there that day?
Yes.
Okay, who
It
was
was
that?
myself,
Mhm.
my husband Enrique, my daughter Gabrielle, my son Aiden, my son Leo, my son Bentley, Brandon, and Jodeci.
Now, the way that the first floor is situated, would you agree that it's on the first floor and it is an open area?
Yes, ma'am.
And so if anyone's at a given location, you can see them because it's an open area.
Yes and no. There is a first living room when you walk in that has a wall that separates that first living room and the kitchen.
Okay, and y'all wouldn't be in there though?
No.
Okay, so talking about the area that y'all would be in, everyone could pretty much see what everyone's doing.
Yes, ma'am.
If someone got up to go get a glass of water, could you see them?
Yes, ma'am.
If someone was sitting at the island on the stools, you could see them.
Yes,
And if someone was sitting over on the couches watching TV, could you see them?
yes.
Would you agree that when the kids were upstairs or anyone was upstairs walking around, being on the first floor, you could hear the footsteps?
To a certain extent.
Okay, but you could hear people walking around?
To a certain extent.
Could you hear if the children were, let's say, horse playing or wrestling, could you hear movement up there?
To a certain extent.
And if somebody was to yell, "Mom," they wanted you to come up or just to yell, or "I'm going to tell mom," and they're yelling, could you hear them?
To a certain extent.
Okay. So it wasn't a situation where the room was so far from the family room / kitchen that you would not hear somebody, let's say, screaming or yelling.
To a certain extent.
Now, Do you recall if on the 13th anyone yelled out for you?
Ma'am,
Okay, any of the boys, did they yell, hey, mom, come look at this, right? Anything like
no,
that?
ma'am.
And if someone was yelling for you, could you have heard them?
To a certain extent, if they were yelling loud enough, yes.
Okay. Now, the fact that there were several, well, I guess 4 adults, right, that day, and the rest were children, what was the noise level in that room? Do you recall?
No, ma'am.
Now, on the 13th of February, you would agree that y'all were not outside barbecuing or
No, ma'am. We were
hanging out
inside.
outside.
No, ma'am.
In fact, that was one of the years that we had a very cold season,
Yes.
the freeze, right, of
Yes.
that year. Okay, and so, so was there, in that week, was there a time when y'all needed some water because you didn't have running water?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and how did y'all get water?
When we were at the home, we had gallons, big, I think 5-gallon water jugs filled.
Yes. How, where did y'all get them filled?
We had previously filled them from our tub.
Okay, you don't remember going to Brandon and Jodeci's house to fill
We
them?
did, no, we did not fill them at their house.
And did y'all have electricity that week?
Our electricity was going to go out, so my husband and I made the decision. Brandon and Joycey and his grandmother offered their home for us to stay while the storm was going on. So my husband and I made that decision to go ahead and go before the electricity went out.
Okay, and so did they offer their home to you as well?
They did.
Okay, and so y'all stayed how many nights?
One.
And in that one evening, do they have a big house like y'all did?
They do a 2-story.
Roomy like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and where did y'all end up sleeping, the family?
Myself and my husband slept upstairs in their loft area.
Yes.
And then I don't recall which rooms the kids slept in, but they were in rooms. I believe it may have been Jodeci and Brandon's daughter's bedroom. I'm not certain.
Okay, but they've made accommodations for your whole family?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and where did Gabby sleep?
In that room, I believe it was their daughter's.
Okay, with their little girl, the baby?
Yes.
Yes, okay, all right. And so y'all just stayed for that one evening, and then was the next day did y'all leave?
Yes, ma'am.
And you didn't notice anything unusual with Gabby or any of your kids, right?
No, ma'am.
And so then the following day, when y'all left, would you agree that y'all had forgotten your chargers? So that on the 19th, they went over and took them to your house, right?
I do not remember.
Now, on the day that you received that text message from your daughter saying that she needed to speak with you. Okay. Before you left to go and get some food, were you alone or with your husband?
Excuse me. I was with my husband.
Okay, so both of y'all were together, and so you left the kids at home.
I did.
And so was Gabby in charge of the children since she was the oldest?
Yes.
Okay, and you said you testified she was 13 or 14, but looking at the year she was born and the month of February, she was not 15 yet, because that was in July. That would have been in July.
Correct.
So we can establish that she was 14. If it was February
According
before.
to the math, yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. And so before you and your husband went to go and get some food, what was happening in y'all's house?
It was a normal afternoon, normal evening.
And what were the kids doing before y'all left?
Oh, gosh. I don't remember.
Do you remember where you last saw the children?
No, ma'am.
Did the children know, pardon me, did they know where y'all were going?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did they know that?
Because I told them I was going to get food and I would be back
And how did you tell them that?
verbally.
Where did you see them to tell them that?
Um, I don't know. I don't know if it was upstairs or downstairs.
Okay. So you just remember telling them, but you cannot, I guess, visualize, you can't tell us where you were when you told them that.
Correct.
Do you think it was possible that from the first floor, standing at the stairwell, that you were like, hey, kids, I'll be back, we're gonna get y'all food, anything like that?
I
Or did
don't
you
recall.
physically see them to tell them that?
I physically saw them and told them, but I do not recall if it was on the first floor or the second floor.
Okay, and so, so from your recollection, what were the boys doing?
Possibly watching TV or playing their Xbox.
Okay, well, yeah, we can't have possibly. What
I
were
don't
they doing?
recall.
If you don't recall, thank you. And what was Gabby doing?
I don't recall.
Okay, and so how long after you announced, right, and told them that y'all were gonna go get some food, did you get that text message?
Within 5 minutes.
So before you left, Gabby was
I
fine,
did
5
not
minutes.
leave. I just walked outside and got in my vehicle. I
Right.
did not leave the residence.
You left the inside of the house to
I
go
did.
outside.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you left, you said 5 minutes later, you get the text. What was Gabby doing before you left 5 minutes ago?
I do not recall.
If she had been crying then, would you have noticed?
If I would have seen her, but I don't recall seeing her.
Okay, so you did not see Gabby then before you
I
left?
don't recall.
So something happened in those 5 minutes that caused her to be upset, correct?
Yes.
And so you, do you recall that when you came to the house and entered the house to go speak with her, she had gotten out of the shower?
Correct.
And how do you know that she had just showered?
I went upstairs into her room and she was in a bath towel and her hair was dripping wet.
Okay, and so, was she in the shower before you left? If you recall.
I don't recall.
All right, and so, you testified that when she texted you that she needed to speak with you, that was out of the ordinary.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, do you remember pre-trialing or I guess meeting with the prosecutor on January the 6th, 2023? You remember meeting with the prosecutor at
ma'am.
some point?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And do you remember telling her that it didn't seem unusual for her to text you, that she needed to talk to you because she asks to talk to you all the time? Do you remember telling them that?
She asked to talk to me all the time, but it was not necessary in a text message.
Okay, but you told them that it was not unusual that she texted you, that she needed to talk to you.
I don't recall.
Okay, but today you're saying that that was very unusual for her to text you, that she needed to speak with you, right? And you agree those are two different statements.
I do.
Now, you're in agreement that when you spoke with her, she said, I need you to believe me.
She did.
Okay, and the reason she said that was because you often did not believe her.
That's incorrect.
Didn't she have a nickname that her father used for her? Stepfather?
Possibly.
Okay. Mentirosa,
Absolutely not.
what does that mean?
That
In
means a
English.
liar, but that is not what my husband would call her.
Okay, that was not a little nickname that he would
No,
call her?
ma'am.
And so you had a lot of things running through your head, correct?
Objection, speculation?
When you met with the prosecutors, you told them that you had a lot of things running through your head, correct? With what she was gonna tell you?
I don't recall.
In fact, you thought that she was pregnant.
No, ma'am, I don't recall.
You don't recall what you told the prosecutors
No,
in
ma'am.
January of 2023?
No, ma'am.
And you told them that Gabby had said that,
I'm gonna
That
object,
she
Your
was-
Honor, this is hearsay with respect to notes in a pretrial.
I'm asking her if she recalls telling the prosecutor this.
You want to approach and show the witness to refresh your memory?
Sure.
You may do so.
May I put your arm?
Yes.
I'm gonna just mark the identification. Oh, right here. Ms. Vasquez, I'm gonna show you what's been marked as defendant's exhibit number 3. And these are notes from the prosecutor. Okay. Okay, and so if you could just read this to yourself. The highlighted
Yes, ma'am.
portion, okay, and disregard my own notes on this side, okay. Do you recall telling the prosecutor that she was raped?
Yes, ma'am, but I corrected myself.
You corrected yourself this year, right?
I did.
Okay, and so you gave them incorrect information the first time, right?
It was incorrect.
In fact, you also gave the officer incorrect information too, right? When you made the report?
No, ma'am,
So she never said the word rape, correct?
she did not.
Those were your words.
They were not my words. They were from a hearing that I had the day before with my husband in regards to custody.
Well, when you spoke with the prosecutor, those were your words to them, right?
Yes,
Okay, so it has nothing to do with any other hearings.
it was in my mind from the hearing before.
It was in your mind
Correct.
to say something that the complainant didn't say.
It was stated by the amicus attorney during the hearing the day before.
Right, but we're
And those
talking
were
about
her words that she used.
when you interviewed with the prosecutor, they were asking you about what she told you, not what was said in a hearing.
It was incorrect.
So you lied.
I did not lie. It was incorrect.
Giving wrong information is lying, correct?
It was incorrect.
So would your daughter give you a lot of incorrect information?
No, ma'am.
You would change the words for her then instead, right?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
You have changed the words for your daughter.
Are you asking if I'm lying?
You,
About?
you would change the words for your daughter, right?
No, ma'am.
And in fact, you had even told the prosecutor that she told you that he penetrated her vagina and used the word vagina, correct?
I'm not sure.
And she never said vagina.
She could have. I'm not sure.
Now, you said after a few minutes you called the police,
Yes, ma'am.
and did you talk to any of your other children?
Your Honor, this calls for hearsay.
Can answer yes or no.
I'm not sure.
Did you call Destiny?
I don't remember.
Did you call Caitlin?
I don't remember.
Did you talk to your husband about it?
I did.
And did he see anything unusual on February the 13th, 21?
Objection calls for hearsay, Your Honor.
You didn't speak with your husband, or you did?
I did.
Do you remember what y'all did on the 14th of February, Valentine's Day?
No, ma'am.
But nothing was unusual with any of your children, right?
Not that I can recall.
Or February the 15th either, right? Nothing was unusual.
Not that I can recall.
Well, if something was unusual, you would have recalled, right?
Sure.
And nothing was unusual about February 16th either, right?
Not sure.
Or February 17th, other than the freeze and
I'm
needing
not sure.
water. But nothing was unusual with your children
Not that I can recall.
or Gabby.
Not that I can recall.
And so now the 21st comes along, she gets out of the shower and she's upset. And that's what she ended up telling you happened, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But on February the 13th, you were present at that address
I
where she
was.
said this happened, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you didn't notice anything unusual.
No, ma'am.
Okay. In fact, you didn't see Brandon gone for a period of time while he was upstairs,
I
right?
did.
Okay, now you're saying that you saw him gone for an extended
He
period
was
of time?
upstairs by himself. He didn't go with Josie.
How long was he upstairs by himself?
I don't recall the amount of time.
Okay, because in the interview on January 6, 23, that hasn't been mentioned. That was never mentioned.
I don't recall.
And on May the 20th, 24, that wasn't mentioned.
I don't recall being asked that.
Okay. You didn't think it was important to tell them that? Oh, it matches up because he actually was upstairs for a long time.
Objection, counsel is testifying argumentative.
Right, you didn't tell them anything about that.
I don't remember if I did.
Were you concerned that he was upstairs for an extended period of time?
No, ma'am.
Okay. How long are you now saying that he was gone?
I don't
upstairs?
recall the amount of time that he was up there.
And so were you keeping an eye on him to see how long?
No, ma'am, because it was not unusual for him to go upstairs with or without my husband or me.
Okay, so now that you recall that day clearly, when they got there, how much time passed before he went upstairs for an extended period of time?
I'm not sure.
So you can't tell us if it was when they first got there that he went up to say hi to the kids? You can't tell us that?
I don't know if it was when he first got there, but it was when they were present.
They were present, okay. Do you remember how long Brandon and Jodeci were at your house that whole evening from the time they got there to the time that they left?
No, ma'am.
So you can't tell us if it was after the first hour, second hour, or third hour?
I don't know what you're asking.
You can't tell this jury at what point of their visit.
It was within the first hour. I
Okay,
don't know if it was on an initial arrival.
okay. But you never thought to tell the police or the detective or the prosecutors this information until today on the
I
stand?
don't recall.
So since you noticed that he'd been gone, did you ask him, why were you up there? Or go up yourself to see what was
It was
happening?
not unusual for Brandon to go upstairs by himself. So no, I did not ask him.
And you didn't have any concerns with him being around any of your children because y'all even later stayed at their house that night.
Absolutely not. I trusted him.
And you had every reason to trust him because he'd never shown you otherwise, right?
Absolutely.
In fact, when these allegations were made, you were actually very surprised too, right?
I wouldn't say that.
Oh, you were surprised,
I wouldn't say that I was surprised.
but you can't say that you weren't surprised either?
There was a lot of emotions.
Did it surprise you that this is something that Brandon would ever do?
I don't know.
Well, you trusted him 100%, right, with your family?
I did.
And you trusted him based on the fact that you'd never seen him ever act inappropriate with your children.
I trusted him because we built that trust over the years.
Right, and because the trust was built based on your observations with him and his
Correct.
family.
Correct.
And he'd always shown you a respectful individual, as a respectful
Yes, ma'am.
individual. And so because it's your daughter, you're gonna believe what Gabby says, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so has Gabby always been truthful with you?
Yes.
So you're telling this jury that she has never lied to you?
I'm sure she's lied.
Okay, so then she always hasn't been truthful with you.
Which kid has?
Well, I'm asking about Gabby.
No.
Now, after y'all made the police report, at some point, a couple of days later, y'all went to the hospital, right? You took Gabby to the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you were in the room with her, bedside, right?
In the ER, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you were present when any medical staff would come and speak with y'all.
Yes, ma'am.
And one of her conditions after they did the x-rays was that she had medium to large stool backup or constipation.
I do not recall.
You don't remember signing on the medical discharge records that it was recommended that she take Myalax?
I do not recall that day specifically.
You didn't, so are you saying you didn't sign discharge?
That's not what I said.
Okay, you just don't recall.
Correct.
One moment. Do you recall when you were in the room that when some of the nurses would come in to check on her, that Gabby even when they asked her, you know, how's your tummy feeling? She said she felt better, so much better now.
I do not recall.
You don't recall her ever complaining of stomach pains?
It's possible, but it was 3 years ago and I do not recall.
All right, just one moment. There's been a request for a short break. So ladies and gentlemen, you've heard some evidence in this case. You're not allowed to talk among yourself about it whatsoever. You're not allowed to view anything. Everything that you need to know about this case is to come from inside this courtroom. Does everyone understand? So I'm going to give you all a 15-minute break. We'll be back at 3. Is that enough time for everyone? All right, everyone, please rise from the field.
Good.
Okay.
What time do you think we'll start tomorrow?
Oh, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
Probably like 9 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe 9:30.
9:30?
Yeah, I think probably, it depends. And the reason why I say that, I need to know what's happening with these 3 other cases.
Hey. Don't you dare.
Yes, we're ready.
All right, to the jury.
All right, everyone, please be seated. And you're still under oath?
Yes, sir.
All right, defense, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Vasquez, we had left off discussing the discharge instructions that you were given after leaving the hospital, you know, before leaving the hospital with your daughter, right?
We were.
And you said you didn't recall what she was, I guess, prescribed, or what she was, I guess, what it was recommended that she take for her problem. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Because I'm going to show you what's been marked as defendant's exhibit number 4. Can you read through this document?
Louder to myself.
No, to yourself. Okay, and can you also, you've read it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and at the bottom of the page, is there a signature that you recognize?
Yes, ma'am, that's my signature.
Okay, that is your
Yes, ma'am.
signature. And what is the date of that signature?
It looks like 2/24/21, 7:30 p.m.
Okay. All right. And so, does that appear to be a document that you were given and you signed?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And so, does your signature look in any way to have been tampered with or changed in any way?
No, ma'am.
Okay. At this time, we offer defendant's exhibit number 4. I'll tender to counsel for objections, if any.
Your Honor, we understand this is within the packet, if you will, that was filed with the BRA, but I'm not sure the relevance has been established with respect to this medication given on the 24th.
All right, may I see the document?
And in conjunction with that, Your Honor, counsel has marked that document as well.
All right, with regards to relevance, that objection will be overruled. And you say that it's been marked?
It's been highlighted, yeah.
It's a highlight. It's not an additional.
All right. Does anyone have one that is not highlighted?
No, it's a big packet, so many digital copies, but none present.
All right, the objection will be overruled. Defendant's exhibit number 4 will be admitted.
May I proceed?
Yes.
And so, Ms. Vasquez, if you could read to the jury, what was, I guess, prescribed or recommended that she take?
Miralax.
All right, and it also has like the scientific name, but the generic name is Miralax.
I'm not sure what the generic name is or what it is.
Okay, all right, but does this document that you signed, that where the discharge home medication list is it Miralax, the bulk bottle?
What's highlighted is Verilox, yes.
May we publish to the jury, Judge?
Yes.
We have no further questions. Pass the
All right,
witness.
state.
No questions from the state, Your Honor.
All right, is this witness excused or subject to recall?
Excuse from the state, Your Honor.
She's excused.
All right, the rule has been invoked. Again, what that means, you're not allowed to discuss your testimony with anyone or view anything. Only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state or the defense. All right, thank you. You may step down. State, call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls, Officer Rhiannon Anderson.
All right, can you raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, you can lower your hand, take a seat. Make sure you keep your voice up so that members of the jury and the court reporter can hear.
Okay.
All right, if you'll state your name for the record.
Rhiannon Anderson.
All right, state.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm asking the state.
Oh,
No problem.
sorry. It's RHIANNON. Yes.
Good morning. Or afternoon at this point. Could you please explain how you are currently employed?
Yes, I'm a police officer with the San Antonio Police Department.
Okay. And I guess, what's your normal work hours or shift?
Okay, currently I'm an instructor at the Police Academy and my hours are 7:45 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
How long have you been with SAPD?
I just hit my 5-year mark at the academy in April. So,
At the academy or?
yeah, I started the academy. So total as a sworn police officer, just over 4 years.
And then, so as you're becoming a police officer, can you talk to us a little bit about what goes on in terms of training and education that you get
Yes.
to be a police
Um,
officer?
In San Antonio, in order to be a police officer, you have to pass the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement's licensing exam. And the state requires about 1,200 training hours. Now, the city of San Antonio requires that we get, we are right at about we're at 1,400. I'm sorry, the state requires about 700. We get about 1,400 training hours. So the city of San Antonio requires us to get double the state minimum. We do courses in the Constitution, we do courses on arrest, search, and seizure, family violence, victims of crime, verbal communication. We do tactics, firearms training, driving. I'm sure I'm missing something, but we get a lot of training.
Now, were you employed as, oh, well, I guess let's talk about, so you said you're currently a trainer at the.
Yes, I am.
What does that entail? Does that entail extra training or education at all?
In order to be an instructor at the police academy, I had to do an instructor's training course. In order to be a certified instructor through the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. It's a 40-hour course that I completed. And then I instruct at the academy approximately 50 hours per cadet class. We currently run 4 academy classes a year.
Is there anything specific that you teach? Or when they train you, do you train and teach a bunch of different of the courses at the academy?
They typically look at our police record time and see what would be best suited to teach. They asked me to teach victims of crime and verbal communication when I first got to the academy. And then I've recently taken over the family violence instruction course.
And then So how were you employed in February of 2021?
In February of 2021, I was still working as a patrol officer.
And specifically on the 13th, do you remember getting called out on a specific kind of call?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember what kind of call that was?
Sexual assault of a child.
And at that time, did you prepare a report after you made the call?
Yes, I did.
And would viewing that report aid in your testimony today, seeing it's been about 3 years?
Yes, it would.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Handing what's been labeled as State's Exhibit number 2. I'm not sure if you got me. Oh. Now, at this time, I'd ask that as we're going through and we're asking questions, if you could use it to refresh your memory, but please don't read directly from it.
Okay.
Now, do you remember where it was that you got called out to on February 13th, 2021?
Yes, it was a residence.
What was the address?
The address was 6014 Briar Drive.
Briar Drive?
Sorry, Bear Drive.
Bear, was it Drive?
A Bear Brook. Remember, it was Bear.
Do you,
Oh, Bear Branch. I
I was just double
apologize.
checking if you were on the right page.
That's my number.
Okay, just double checking. What was it again?
So I'm sorry, Bear Branch. I was looking at the abbreviation.
And what city is that located in?
That's in San Antonio.
Now, when you went out, do you remember that call?
I do.
What's the first thing you remember about that call?
I remember specifically taking the call. I look for calls that are involving children or family violence. I feel like I'm well suited to take those calls. And so I remember this call when I saw it on the screen and I asked the dispatcher to send me to the call.
And so what was the first thing you did when you made the scene?
The first thing I did when I made the scene is made sure I was at the correct address. And then there was a woman outside, out front. And so I approached her, asked her if she called police, introduced myself. She said that she had called police and we spoke.
Now, without getting into, I guess, what y'all were talking about outside, can you tell me the woman's demeanor?
She was very upset. I remember she was very emotional. At one point, she stopped talking to try to gather her emotions.
Do you remember who that person was?
She was the mother of a victim that had been, that was the subject of the call, the case.
Do you remember her name? Is it in your report? Sorry.
Yes. Her name is in here. Her name is April Vasquez.
So eventually, after you were discussing things with Ms. Vasquez outside of the home, what did you do after your conversation with her?
After my conversation with her, I asked if her daughter would speak to me.
Okay. And do you know, why were you seeking out her daughter?
I needed to, as a police officer, it's important that I speak to the person making the allegation. And so I wanted to speak with her.
And were you able to speak with her?
Yes, I was.
Do you remember, was that outside or was that somewhere else?
It was inside. I met with her in the kitchen and then we went into a room or a garage that had been converted into like a man cave. There was a lot of sports memorabilia.
And while you were with, do you remember what the daughter's name was?
I know we did a pseudonym. a pseudonym form, so mostly in my report, it was under that pseudonym, but I believe I remember her nickname, but I want to make sure that I get it. I believe that her name was Gabby, her nickname was Gabby.
Now, while you were speaking to Gabby, without going into what she said, obviously, what were you looking at, I guess, as you're speaking with the victim of crime?
When I'm speaking to a victim, I pay a lot of attention to their tone and their demeanor, and the words that they're saying and their pauses as well.
What is it about the tone and demeanor that is important to you as a police officer?
Emotionally, you see a wide range of emotions with victims. So I do put some stock into that, but I also, in my experience, see a wide range of emotions. But I do pay attention to that.
After you were speaking with her, does the tone and demeanor, I mean, can it shift as you're interviewing?
It can. I notice when I'm speaking with victims, if I hit on something that's maybe traumatic or they are reliving something that's happened, their emotions will tend to get more intense.
Do you recall if things changed or shifted as you were speaking to Gabby?
Yes.
How so?
I remember when I asked her if she could tell me what happened, that she got quiet. And I remember I don't remember exactly the wording of the question, but I remember I asked her something more specific about what had happened. And she began to tear up.
And have you ever, I guess, handled these kinds of interviews with victims before?
Yes, I have.
What does a quietness and tearing up usually relay to you?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Now, after you were speaking with Gabby, did you do anything else while you were on scene?
While I was on scene, I called the crime scene investigation unit, and I also called a detective.
Now, why would you call the detective?
Detectives do all of our investigative work. Patrol's job is to go and take the initial report from everybody on scene, and then to report to the detective what our initial facts that we've gathered are.
And then why would you call the crime scene investigations?
In case there's any sort of evidence for the case. They do all the collecting of crime scene.
After speaking with the detective, were you, I guess, given any kinds of instructions about how to handle this case moving forward?
When I spoke to the detective, they did want a crime scene investigator to come out and to collect some bedding. And they also, I believe that they were going to have me write the case of as continuous sexual abuse of a child.
And so what was the importance of the bedding that they were trying to come and collect?
I asked Gabby where the assault had taken place. And she stated in her bedroom, on her bed.
And when you said assaults, what do you mean with adding the S onto that?
She told me that there were.
Closer here, session.
Sustained.
Now, you had said you collected the bedding because you suspected something had happened there.
Yes.
Were you aware of when the assault would have occurred?
It was just outside of our 120 hours, which with 120 hours, we're mandated to have a victim of sexual assault go down and have a STAIN exam. So I know it was just outside of that. So it would have been between 5 and 7 days.
So what is the significance of the 120 hours?
Typically, 120 hours is the maximum by which DNA can be usable in order to trace. And so outside of that, it wouldn't render us anything useful in order, by way of identification.
So this was, you said it's outside the 120 hours, so it was, you said 5 to 7 days? Or
5 to
was it
7 days, I believe, is, so it was outside of that. I mean, yeah.
Would it surprise you if it was 8 days later?
No, that wouldn't.
Now, after you called the detective and then you called the CSI and the evidence was collected, did you do anything further on scene?
I gave information for the follow-up unit to the mom. I give all of the victims, all the citizens in the city that I talk to, whether it's for a noise complaint all the way up to a shooting. I give them a case card with the case number and then the follow-up information because they really won't be seeing me again after that initial night. The case gets turned over to a detective and our case cards have what unit that's going to go to. In this case, it was a special victims unit with a phone number to call and then the case number, that everything will be logged by that case number from that point forward.
And do you recall the case number in this case?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can tell you
If you-
I can tell you it's got a 21 in it because it happened in 2021. So it'd be SAPD 21-032-532.
And so after this case, and you said you moved things onto a follow-up unit. Sorry, I'm just.
Yes.
Now, during your time as an officer, have you been on a lot of these kinds of calls?
Yes.
Okay. And do you submit all of your reports moving forward?
Yes, I do.
And you submitted this one, obviously.
Yes, I did.
So once you move those cases forward, do you know if every case gets filed?
I do not.
Your Honor, we pass the witness.
All right, defense.
Officer Anderson, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Chris Ramos. If I have some questions for you, if at any point you don't understand my question or it doesn't make sense, please let me know before you answer.
Okay.
So, if I heard you correctly, and I don't know if it was an inadvertent statement. I'm not sure what I heard. Did you say you responded on February 13th to the House?
I believe that was what the prosecution said. I thought that it was on the 22nd.
Okay, just so that we're clear, initially, maybe inadvertently, you stated you arrived on February 13th, but that's an incorrect date.
That's not correct. I don't think that's what I don't believe I stated that.
Okay. What day did you report?
The 22nd.
Okay. Hold on. You sure it wasn't the 21st?
God. Oh, it was the 21st, but by the time I think my report was submitted at like 1 o'clock in the morning, then it had switched over to the 22nd. But
Okay.
yes, on scene on the 21st, that's when I first made arrival at the address.
So you arrive at the scene, and my understanding is that you're, as the first responder, so to speak, the first investigative responder, you need to assess what's going on, correct?
Yes,
And you meet with mom, correct?
yes,
And you speak with the daughter, correct?
yes,
Okay, and in this process, you're coming to the conclusion that there's a potential for a felony investigation that's kind of being placed in front of you, correct?
yes,
And at that moment, you realize that a detective needs to get involved, correct?
yes,
And it's my understanding typically, it's the protocol for a patrol officer to call a detective to, if there's a felony involved, especially one alleging sexual abuse, to call a detective and get more information, correct?
What do you mean by get more information?
Well, to call a detective, once you realize that there is an allegation of a sexual incident, it's my understanding that patrol calls in for a detective. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, once I know that I'm gonna be writing a felony report, yes, I call a detective.
Okay, and that's the typical method, correct?
Yes,
And I believe you called or spoke to Detective Quinn. Does that sound about right?
yes.
And what time did Detective Quinn arrive at the location?
I do not believe that Detective Quinn made the location that night.
Okay, so you spoke to him by phone.
Yes,
Okay. And when you spoke to him by phone, you provided information to him, correct?
yes.
And did he give you directives?
I believe that he gave me the direction to have a CSI come out to collect bedding
Okay,
and to write the case up as a continuous sexual assault of a child.
so when you spoke to Detective Quinn over the phone, you communicated to him that, at least it was your understanding, that you had a potential crime scene at this location, correct?
Yes,
And the potential crime scene of this location was primarily the girl's bedroom, correct?
yes,
And it's my understanding that you communicated to Detective Quinn that the bedding in this room, in this alleged crime scene, had not been washed, correct?
correct.
And it's my understanding that the clothes that the girl was wearing at the time of the incident, or the alleged incident, had not been washed as well, correct?
If I recall correctly, I believe that they had not been washed. She was gonna go and check.
So as you're getting this information from the mom, is it fair to say that for you, in your opinion, the bedding and the clothing had some value in an evidence-wise sense?
Potentially, given the time lapse, there was still some chance of that potentially could be useful.
Okay. So you relay this information to Detective Quinn, correct?
Yes,
And with his experience, he says, go ahead and collect the bedding, correct?
yes,
And go ahead and collect the clothing, correct?
yes.
Now, are you allowed to collect the clothing?
I'm not.
So that's why he called the CSI agent to come in, correct?
Yes,
And this CSI agent was Mr. Coonrat, correct?
yes,
And I presume you remember Mr. Coonrat, correct? He's been around forever.
yes, I do.
You know, friendly guy, very positive guy. So he came in, and did he collect the bedding?
Yes, I believe he
And-
did.
Did he collect the clothing?
I believe that he did.
Okay. Now, the reason somebody like Detective Mr. Coonran comes in to collect the items is because eventually those items are going to be submitted for testing, correct?
Yes, he's an investigator. He's not a detective, but yes, he collects bedding and clothing for examination.
Okay. And the reason he does it is because it's his role to collect it and send it,
Your Honor, no object as counsel's testifying.
Overruled.
and his job is to collect and preserve it, correct?
Yes,
And he's trained to collect it in a way so that's not contaminated, correct?
yes,
And he takes that, he's in charge, he takes custody of that, correct?
yes, that's correct.
And it's fair to say that he's the beginning of the chain of custody of this item, correct? Of these items.
Yes, that would be fair to say.
And then he takes these items to the San Antonio property room where it's housed, correct?
Yes,
And it's my understanding that when an a CSI person does something like this, the purpose of that is for the clothing to be tested for DNA in the future, correct?
yes.
Now, when the DNA is tested, these clothing are tested, do you get a copy of the result?
I do not.
Okay. As time went on, did you have any questions as to whether or not, did you ask anybody what were the results of this testing?
I did not.
Now, as you're going through this area, is a detective assigned to the case? Does this case belong to Detective Quinn now that he's got involved?
No,
Okay. Where does how do you find out which detective gets the case?
It goes to the special victims unit and then they assign a case internally. I submit my report and then from there, the department routes it
Okay.
to where it goes. My involvement at
So-
that point is done.
Any sort of investigative work would be done by the assigned detective, correct?
Yes,
So the assigned detective would get the DNA report and review it and make a determination of how to use it, correct?
that I can't answer.
Well, how, in your opinion, how do you think, where do you think the result,
Question, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge.
in her opinion,
speculation.
All right, let me hear the question, then I'll hear the objection, and then I'll make a ruling.
as an instructor, and in your opinion, where do you think the lab results go after they're completed?
Your Honor, I
I don't
would
know.
object to speculation because her instructor, like qualifications are to victim statements. It has absolutely nothing to do with lab reports.
All right, that'll be overruled. She's answered and she stated she does not know.
Fair enough.
You can
What do
ask your next question.
Yes, ma'am. If I understand you correctly, your role at the scene essentially stops once you leave, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so any sort of investigative role would be done by the detective, correct?
yes,
Okay, so they would do whatever review of the case in order to form their opinion as to what should happen, correct?
I haven't been trained as a detective. So I mean, that sounds right.
Okay. So here's the thing, and I don't mean to be unkind about this,
Oh,
but
that's okay.
you're an SAPD officer, correct?
Yes, yes,
You're a trainer at the academy.
yes.
Do you have any understanding of what a detective does?
Yes, a detective investigates the crimes,
And what
but
sorts of things do they look at for their investigation?
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Overruled.
What sorts of things would a detective look at for their investigation?
so common sense would tell me they probably look at victims, suspects, evidence.
Would common sense tell you that they would look at the DNA police report?
That I don't know, because I don't know how they would, if they interpret that. I really can't answer what a detective does with the DNA if they get the results. I don't want to tell you yes, because I don't have knowledge of
Okay.
that.
Would it be beyond your role as an SAPD officer, have you ever come across circumstances in which you have seen,
Your Honor, I object to relevance. It's
I mean-
past her expertise or past her knowledge as a police officer.
All right, so let me hear the question and then I'll hear your objection and I'll make a ruling.
in your experience, just as a layperson,
Mhm.
everyday person, have you ever seen or reviewed or witnessed detectives reviewing DNA reports?
Your Honor, I object to relevance.
We all watch true crime, Judge.
All right, so here's the thing.
Yes, ma'am.
You all will ask your questions. I will hear the question and then I'll hear the objection raised. And so state, what is your objection?
Your Honor, I'd object to the relevance of her personal knowledge to detectives' work or receipt of DNA.
All right, that'll be sustained.
Now, this incident, what was alleged is, fair to say, a significant allegation, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you've identified, in speaking to the family, a crime scene, a potential crime scene, correct?
correct?
That could offer significant valuable evidence, correct?
Yes,
And during this entire investigation, or during your time there, which was about 3 or 4 hours, fair enough to say,
that sounds about right.
a detective never went to the crime scene, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the detective wasn't there to direct the CSI as to what items to take, correct?
That's correct.
Now, typically in this circumstance, you have an incident that took place, the allegation took place several days ago, correct?
Correct.
And typically in these circumstances, are you instructed as a patrol officer on your own to make a decision whether or not you're going to make an arrest?
Typically, if an arrest is gonna be made, if I have probable cause to make an arrest, then I will make an arrest.
Okay. Now, in this case, you did not go out and find the suspect in this case, correct?
Not in this case and nor other cases as well.
Okay.
That's not what our procedure is.
Okay. And did you interview any potential witnesses in the home?
I did not.
Did a detective come over and interview any potential witnesses in the home?
I would object to lack of personal knowledge.
She was there.
All right, so again, y'all ask questions, don't talk to each other, just direct your questions to me.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, do you know the answer to the question?
Could you run it by me one more time, please?
While you were there, did a detective arrive to take any statements from any of the witnesses that were there?
Not during the time that I was on scene.
Did either you or anybody a part of SAP take photos of the alleged crime scene?
That would be something that the crime scene investigator would take care of, and I'm not aware as to whether they did that or not.
While you were there, did you see anybody take any pictures of the crime scene?
I didn't see that, but I was also in my vehicle, so I'm not sure, I can't say as to whether that happened. It could have, it could not have.
Okay. And when you were meeting with the girl, was she forthcoming in giving you information, or did you feel like you had to pull information out of her?
I didn't feel like I had to pull information out of her. I did feel like building rapport with her was important, and that took a little bit. But I did feel like once we started talking about the allegations, she was able to tell me what happened.
Prior to today, in meeting with the prosecutors, have you had a chance to review your body cam?
Yes, I have.
Would it be fair to say that she did not tell you what happened?
That would not be fair to say.
So if I understand your testimony correctly,
Mhm.
you arrive at the scene, you speak to the mom, speak to the daughter, you yourself collect no physical evidence, correct?
Right, that's not within my purview as a patrol officer.
And you have no understanding as to what the results were from the testing of the bed, correct?
That's correct,
But in your opinion, there could have been some value in that testing, correct?
potentially.
And while you were there, a detective never arrived to speak to any witnesses, correct?
That's correct.
It's asked and answered.
All right, that'll be overruled.
I spoke with him extensively over the phone.
So we break it down. Your role was to speak to the parents, speak to the mom, and leave, correct?
Speak to the mom and speak to the daughter. Yes.
In speaking with the girl, did you inquire or try to obtain any sort of evidence that could, let me ask you this, did you ask her, hey, look, I know you're saying these things about this guy. Was he texting you or saying anything inappropriate to you? Can I see your phone?
I did not ask to see her phone.
Did the young girl offer whether she had told anybody else other than her mother?
I believe she told me she was on the phone with a friend, possibly a cousin, somebody that was close to her, that she had talked about what had happened.
Did you reach out to any of the individuals that you were speaking to on the phone?
I did not. I passed that information on to the detective.
Okay, and it would have been the detective's job to follow up on that, correct?
Yes,
You know the detective followed up on that.
I do not.
I'll pass the witness, Judge. Thank you.
State,
No further questions, Judge?
all right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse from the state, Judge.
She's excused, Judge.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means is you cannot discuss your testimony with anyone except for attorneys for the state or the defense, and you're not allowed to view anything. All right, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Do I?
Just
Give
leave
this
that
to-
to the,
Okay.
with the court reporter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Does anyone need a break? All right, call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Detective O'Brien.
Can you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up for members of the jury and also for the court reporter. Could you state your name for the record?
My name is Alicia O'Brien, ALICIA OBRIEN.
All right, state.
Thank you. Would you do me a favor and spell your name? You just did, didn't you?
I did, but I can do it again if you need it.
Sure, go ahead.
ALICIA OBRIEN.
And how are you employed?
Currently employed with the San Antonio Police Department.
And what's your job title?
Right now, I'm a sergeant with the Internal Affairs Unit.
And what kind of training have you gone through first to become, we'll start with a police officer.
To be a police officer, you have to go through our academy. It's about 8 months long. You go through skills training, combat fighting. You have to take a TCOL exam to make sure academically that you know all the laws and the procedures. That's pretty much it.
And then is there any other training that you received specifically
Just in general.
after the academy? Yes.
Sure. After the academy, I was on patrol for 6 years. As far as training is concerned, usually it's a field training officer that you're assigned for your first 3 months out as what we call a probationary officer. It's kind of on the job training per se. After I did 6 years as a patrol officer, I promoted to detective. And I went to the special victims unit where I deal with assigned cases that involve sexual offenses.
Now, is there any other kind of training you get to be a detective or to be a special victims detective?
Sure, primarily just to become a detective, we go to what we call detective school. It's kind of introduces you to collecting evidence, conducting interviews. I guess more so the follow-up part of anything that's taken from a patrol officer to further investigate. On top of that, my time at SVU got a lot of training, specifically writing warrants, interviewing both victims, suspects. Because my role was only sexual involved cases, dealing with trauma-based interviews, just there's a different way to talk to, someone that may have been robbed than someone that's been sexually assaulted. And then, of course, the difference between talking to an adult victim and a child victim.
And so how long did you serve as a detective?
4 years.
And were you serving as a detective in February of 2022?
Yes.
Were you a detective in February of 2021? I misspoke.
Yes.
The year, I'm sorry.
I'm like, wait a second, I had to think about it. Yeah, I actually promoted to sergeant at the end of 2022, I think the summer of 2022. So yes, I was a detective, 2021.
And so do you recall, I guess, being assigned a case involving a child by the name of Gabrielle Guerrero?
Yes,
And did you investigate that case?
I did.
Following your investigation, did you prepare a report that would aid in your testimony to provide information for us today?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I push the witness?
Yes.
I brought my copy.
Oh, did you bring a copy?
Yeah. Sure. It's the whole case.
Okay, thank you. So now you're reviewing a few pages from what's been previously labeled as State's Exhibit 2. Could you, as we're going through, and I'm asking you questions about this case, if you could review it, refresh your memory, but please don't read directly from it.
Sure.
So now, do you remember, when were you assigned the case?
I'll have to look up that date. Believe it was in the middle of February. Well, it says the first thing I did on the case was February 24th.
Okay,
So probably it was the day before or the day of. Unless there was a weekend somewhere in there.
and on February 24th, I guess, what's the first thing you remember about this text?
February 21st, 24th is when I contact the victim's mother to schedule a forensic interview at Child Safe.
Okay, and is that a step that you take in all of your sexual assault cases?
Only the ones that involve children.
Okay, and why is it specifically forensic interview for a child?
So I'll explain what a forensic interview is. I don't know if anyone has yet, but so we have a place called Child Safe. It's a child's victim advocacy center, basically. So they have people that are specialized to conduct child interviews, both for child abuse and child sexual abuse. So they have a way to elicit information from children without leading them. And so, for example, did he touch your vagina? They don't say that. They would say things like, is there something that happened that you didn't want to happen? And they let the child, it's really open-ended. It's considered a soft interview. When you come to the police station, it's very much a bread box to interview people. It's not comfortable. But Child Safe, it's different. It's a nice, comfortable room for children with a nice, comfortable couch, someone that's speaking to them at a childlike level.
And so I guess why would you do a forensic interview as opposed to like you interview?
To be unbiased, primarily. We want someone that they do not know anything about this case. We don't talk to them about the case. We let them know the child's information as far as their name, their date of birth, and then they run with it without knowing the specifics of the case. For that very reason, is to be unbiased.
Okay. And so you said that a forensic interview had been scheduled. Do you know if one occurred?
Yes.
How do you know that one occurred?
I was there for it, March 1st.
So were you present for it?
I believe I was present for it. Sometimes I'm present for it, sometimes the DVD is given to me after the fact.
Okay. How is it given to you after the fact?
I pick it up from Child Safe.
And if you pick it up from Child Safe or you're there for it, are you there to conduct the interview?
No.
What's your purpose for being there?
So the way the room is set up, you have the forensic interviewer and the child in a room. There's usually a separate room that either the investigator from police and in some cases a CPS investigator, we're there to watch it in case, as we know the case, if there needs to be anything specifically asked, that would be helpful. Like if, for example, if someone said, I told my friend, but they don't really give that information, I would have the interviewer follow up and say, hey, ask her what her friend's name is, because that's someone I want to talk to.
And so we can't get into it, exactly what was said as it's hearsay, but do you recall what the demeanor was as you were viewing this interview of?
The victim's demeanor,
Yes.
she had a very difficult time, emotionally, very common, just talking about for her, probably the worst day of her life, so recalling the, you know, intricate details gets very hard for anyone, but especially for children.
And how is it as a, using your training as a detective, how can you tell that it's hard, that it's difficult for Gabby to talk about it? How could you tell? What about her?
When they first start talking, they build some type of rapport. They might ask, okay, what do you like to do? Do you go to school? Just to kind of build a relationship. But as soon as it crosses over to something specific where they're asking, has there anything happened to you that you didn't like or you were uncomfortable with? It changes immediately, where now they're talking about what they don't want to talk about.
And what is it that you see that changes?
A lot of time, well, with her specifically, she was crying. She kind of got quiet. It was hard for her to talk about things. There was a lot of pausing.
And so after that interview, you said you're there and you listen for any other additional information about follow-up. Did you need to do any follow-up after the interview that you could tell?
In this case, she did say that when this was happening, that she FaceTimed her cousin. And that she made her initial outcry to her cousin. So I did follow up and contact that cousin.
How old is that?
The cousin?
Yes.
At the time, 16, so a couple years older than the victim.
So another teenager.
Correct.
After that interview, what was the next steps that you took?
After I talked to her, so after the forensic interview is concluded, if there is an outcry of some sort of touching or penetration, they're referred to a place called Center for Miracles, where there is a non-acute sexual exam conducted. I scheduled that. That probably happened within a week from the forensic interview. The next thing I needed was to give the suspect, in this case, an opportunity to give me his side of the story. So I attempted to contact him.
And just to be clear, were you able to speak with him during this investigation?
We spoke on the phone. He declined to come in for an interview.
Did you speak with anyone else in this case besides the defendant?
I spoke to the mom, spoke to Destiny, the cousin. I'm sorry, I
cousin?
can't remember her name. Is it Destiny?
I if it's in the report.
Destiny, yes, that's who I spoke to, the cousin.
So that was the cousin that was mentioned that you wanted to follow up with,
That's correct.
the 16-year-old?
Yes.
Now, do you know, once you got this case, what was some of the information you knew about it going in that you needed to follow up on as the detective?
So when I got this case, the first thing I'm looking at is what's the time span of when it was reported, you know, for evidence collection. I realized that the most recent incident that was being reported was approximately 7 or 8 days prior to the report. I watched Officer Anderson's body-worn camera. A lot of times when someone calls 911 for a child, it's not the child calling, it's the mom or the teacher or the counselor. That's someone that they has outcry to. I watched that. I felt that the interview that was conducted by Officer Anderson was efficient for the outcry witness. She got enough detail, so I understood how this came out, how this came about. I got the details of the short interview that Officer Anderson conducted with the victim. So I have an idea of the offense we're looking at as far as the elements of the offense, the penal code part of it. But yeah, I know immediately the first thing I want to do is get her over to Child Safe to get all the details that weren't really all there yet.
And so you had said something about non-acute child, or not child safe, some kind of non-acute
Sexual assault exam.
sexual assault exam. Why do you say non-acute?
So for us to do what we call a SANE exam, or what most people know it as the rape kit, you have 120 hours, which is 5 days. So I knew that we had already surpassed that. So there's not going to be any way that there's going to be any kind of evidence that's going to be collected from her body. So I knew that it was going to be Center for Miracles.
What's the significance of the 120 hours?
It used to be 96 hours and they switched it to 120 hours. That's just a threshold that pretty much the state says that after that point, we're not going to do a sexual assault exam. I don't know if that's a financial reason, but for the most part, after 3 days, there's hardly any chance to find any DNA evidence.
And so that's for the sexual assault exam.
Correct.
What about any other evidence that may have been collected?
So that's when police were called out, Officer Anderson contacts a follow-up detective. It would have been SVU, but it was after hours, so a night detective is actually the ones that are consulted for these cases, for any cases that need a detective. She also requested that CSI make the location to gather the bedding from the victim's bedroom and an outfit that she believed that she was wearing.
And so we're talking about, you said this is 7 or 8 days later. What was, I guess, the likelihood of any DNA evidence coming back at that point?
On her body?
From the bedding?
From the bedding, it's difficult. I know. You know, one thing she said is she didn't think anything came out of the defendant's penis. So, which to me says he didn't ejaculate. So the chances of anything coming back on the bedding are slim to nil.
So, and why is that? What do you need in order for there to be some kind of a hit or a match with DNA evidence?
When it comes to bedding, they're primarily looking at a black light and they're looking for saliva, blood, or semen.
Those 3 things?
Yes. For sexual assault, yes.
So would it, I mean, is it surprising if the sheets came back inconclusive in this case?
No.
And why is that?
For the reason of, we don't know the positioning, that if the defendant was even on the bed, the fact that she says she does not believe that he ejaculated, sounded like it was a short encounter. It did not surprise me.
Would it surprise you if there's any inconclusive results for the clothes
It wouldn't surprise me,
for the same reason?
yes.
Now, when you're going through your investigations and your interviews, because I guess you said you had reached out to the defendant, you'd spoken to Mom and Destiny. I guess without going into what they said, because we don't want to get into say. What are you looking for when you're interviewing potential witnesses?
I'm looking for cooperation. I'm looking for consistency. I'm also looking for red flags. Does this person have anything to gain to make this up? But for the most part, I'm looking for consistent statements.
As you're interviewing, are there reasons you might not speak to some folks?
Sure.
Why?
If someone has not witnessed or has been privy to like an outcry, they're not valuable to my case.
Even if they potentially saw something?
If they saw something, If they witnessed the actual act, then I would want to talk to them. In this case, at the time, I believe there was 3 boys, 3 brothers, and the mom and dad home. The mom said that the brothers didn't see anything. The victim said the brothers didn't see anything. So they were also children, so I didn't interview them.
What do you mean by children?
I believe they were all under the age of 12.
And so during your time as a detective, have you seen a lot of cases like this?
Unfortunately.
What is it, I guess, that you look for specifically when you're deciding to forward a case to the DA's office?
I'm looking for obviously probable cause, but for this, I'm looking for consistency. When someone makes an outcry for sexual assault, there's a process where they have to tell a number of people over and over and over. In this case, she had to tell her cousin, she told her mom, she told responding police, she told the child safe forensic interviewer, and she told the doctor. And every 5 times that she had to recount this whole event, she was consistent. I had no reason to not believe her.
I just want to, even with any inconclusive kind of results from DNA evidence.
Yeah, and to be clear, DNA in these cases, it's not very common. Unless someone has called right after it's happened, it's very uncommon for us to collect DNA for these cases.
So even in cases within the 120 hours, do you get DNA every time?
No,
Even if there's reports that some kind of, you said, blood, semen, or saliva may have been around, do you still get results?
it's rare. And like I said, when I'm saying calling right away, you know, I'm talking within the first couple of hours of after it's happened. And most victims of any kind of sexual assault do not come forward right away. The majority of them don't. Honestly, more than half don't ever come forward. It's very rare.
And so you're familiar with kind of reactions that the victims and family members and witnesses might have whenever you're going through these investigations.
Yes.
How do victims react?
It's a loaded question because everyone reacts so very differently. Trauma looks different on, you know, every person, every age, it's different. I'll tell you some of the most common things I hear of maybe why they delayed their outcry and they didn't come
I'm gonna
forward.
object to irrelevance.
Sustained.
So detective, after your investigation was complete, when you submitted the case, were you still awaiting any kind of information?
Yes, so I had sent the bedding and her outfit to our crime lab. The turnaround time is usually six plus months. It's not quick. So I didn't have the results of that.
But you still submitted this report.
Yes,
Based on your investigation, you felt that it warranted filing with the DA's office.
yeah. Based on the credibility of the victim and cooperation.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, defense.
Good afternoon, Detective O'Brien. Was your testimony that unless a witness saw the actual act, you're not going to interview them?
Right, that would make them not a witness if they didn't see it.
Okay, and so you keep saying that what's important is to look for consistent statements, right?
Sure.
Okay, so all a person needs to do is repeat the same thing 5 or 6 times to different people, and to you, that's a consistent statement, right?
You don't realize how hard that is when you're being honest versus being dishonest, to be
Okay.
consistent.
Right, but my question was that you're just looking for consistent statements. So if they say the same thing
Your
5
Honor,
different
objection,
times,
Council's testifying.
Overruled.
if they say the same statement 5 different times, to you, that's considered trustworthy, right?
They didn't say it
Yes
to
or no?
me. They didn't, well, let me answer. They didn't say it to me. They said it to 5 different people and 5 different dates, and she was consistent.
Right,
That's hard to do when you're lying.
so she's repeating it 5 different times. Right?
Sure, yes.
Okay, and so to you, that then means that it's correct and that it happened. That's what you're saying.
Along with the cooperation from her cousin and her mother.
Okay, well, and actually, you didn't corroborate any information, any evidence, right?
I did. I interviewed the cousin that she initially made the outcry to, and she corroborated
Okay,
that it
and
was a statement.
are you aware of how many conversations they had together before she spoke with you, Destiny?
No.
So you don't know if they got together and decided what they were gonna tell you. You don't know that, right?
I guess not.
So I guess as long as someone else said the same thing, you're gonna just take it as true, right?
Again,
You took it as true.
from 5 different people that were all credible people. Yes, I believe that.
Okay, and you also, because the mother of the child was the first person that told Officer Anderson her version of what the complainant said, then y'all take that as true automatically, correct?
The mother's outcry statement?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't believe she had any reason to lie about this.
You didn't think she had any reason,
But are you asking me?
right? Well, that's what
Then
you
yes,
just said.
that was my opinion.
Okay, and so, but you don't look for any evidence to show that this is not true. In fact, you look for only evidence to show that it is true and that it did happen, right?
I tried to contact to get his side of the story, so I didn't get his version of the facts.
Okay, well, a person that's the focus of an investigation has a right to an attorney, correct?
Right, but that also ties my hands behind my back, right? I mean, if I can only talk to who's gonna talk to me.
Well, your hands were tied behind your back and you were not able to go back to the crime scene
8 days after it happened?
at any
Why
time
would-
after it happened.
Why would I go back to the crime scene?
To gather information to see if it was actually possibly true or even not true. You didn't go back to the crime scene, did you?
No, because there was nobody else that witnessed it to interview.
Okay, and did you go back to the crime scene to try to at least look at the home and the possibility of that even happening with the information that you had?
Yeah, I had the officer's body worn camera, so I was able to see the layout of upstairs.
So then you're relying on just their body cam as they're walking in the house, going upstairs, and to you, that's your, I guess, diagram?
Pretty accurate, I mean, it's a camera.
And you didn't personally, though, other than viewing a body cam, you didn't personally go to that house to see, wait a minute, if this room was there, someone else could have seen if that was true or heard something. You didn't go back to try to find that out, right?
I didn't personally go back to or go to the crime scene. Again, it was a time lapse of over a week. There would be no reason for me to go. The evidence that was present was already collected. There'd be no reason for me to go there.
Is this the same type of investigation you would do for a murder case? They said that that's who shot him, so that's all I need.
Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
Is this your type?
I'm not a
of
murder detective, so I can't answer that.
Okay, well, would you think that but actually, as a detective, you still are fully aware of what other detectives do?
Your Honor, objection, lack of
Isn't that
personal
correct?
knowledge. She's already said she's not a murder detective.
Overruled.
You can answer.
Say it again.
Okay, as a detective, even though you're assigned to the SVU unit, in your schooling and, your education, with regards to being a detective, you're fully aware of what another detective in a different section would have to do, right?
What another detective would have to do?
You would know what another detective would have to do.
I don't get the question. What are you asking?
Okay, so my example was, is this the same kind of investigation that you would do in a murder case?
I'm not a murder detective.
And that's why I'm asking you that question. You're saying you have no idea what a murder detective would need to do to follow up on it, let's say a shooting or a murder? You wouldn't know that?
I mean, are you asking me what our murder unit detailed? How they conducting, I mean, we're talking about a dead body versus a eight-day-old crime scene of a sexual assault. They're apples and oranges.
So because we're not dealing with a dead body, then you cut off your investigation, right?
Well, you're talking, maybe I'm not understanding you. You're portraying that there's a dead body in this apartment, and obviously a detective would have made the scene, there's a crime scene that is active, there is an actual dead body. Opposed to this case that was 7 or 8 days old.
Okay, all right, well, you're a little bit in left field, but let me go back to my question. Now, because there was a body worn camera from the officer, the responding officer, to you, that was sufficient evidence.
To get the outline, yeah, I mean, she described it in the forensic interview where her bedroom was, where the boys' bedroom were.
Would it be important to know who possibly could have seen or not seen something?
But she said nobody witnessed it. The mom said she questioned the boys, nobody witnessed it. The boys were the only ones upstairs. Who would I ask?
Okay, where did she tell you the boys were?
In their bedroom.
Okay, and did you look at each of the bedrooms to see how the setup is upstairs?
Like inside of them? No,
No, just where they were in relation to the crime scene?
no.
And that's what I'm saying. You just didn't do any further investigation to see if, you know, maybe something's not right here. Maybe that wasn't possible. Right? You didn't go back to try to.
Yeah, if you're asking if I went to the crime scene, I did not, I'll be clear, I did not go to the crime scene 8 days later. I did not go into anybody's bedroom. I did not, no, I did not.
All right, and you in fact are taking it, just her word for it, that he went upstairs. Right?
The victims were?
Yes,
Yes.
okay. And what if you knew from everyone that was in the home that he was not upstairs? Would that make a difference?
Someone would have told me that though. I talked to the mom.
So then, someone would have told you this. So then you're giving the investigation, you're basically wanting the possible witnesses to be the ones conducting an investigation and handing it over to you?
No, the victim herself said that nobody witnessed it. Nobody saw him go into the room. Nobody saw anything happen while they were in the room.
Would you agree that if someone's in a room, they wouldn't know who all would have seen that person in there?
I suppose.
But you didn't care to further investigate, did you?
I did not interview the 3 minors.
Your job as a detective is to file cases, right? Not to get them dismissed, right?
My job as a detective is to investigate them. Some get filed and some don't.
Okay, and one of your duties is to submit any possible evidence to be submitted for DNA testing, if any. Right?
Yes, that's collected, yes.
Okay, and so you said if it's saliva, blood, or semen, that could potentially be evidence towards the case, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you're not saying that after 8 days or 10 days or 30 or 6 months, that saliva just disappears, blood just disappears, Or that semen just disappears? You're not saying that, are you?
No, I'm not saying that.
And so here, you collected the clothing was collected and you submitted the clothing and the bedding to the laboratory, correct?
Yes,
And specifically, it was a pair of shorts, correct?
I think it was an outfit.
Okay, it was underwear, a pair of shorts. Yes or no?
Yes,
Okay, tank top. A tank top,
some shirt, I can't remember.
okay,
There was a shirt, shorts, underwear, and a panty liner.
and a sanitary pad
Yes,
is how you listed it. Okay, and a flat sheet
yes,
and a blanket.
correct.
Okay, and so you submitted this clothing and the bedding over to the Bexar County Criminal Investigation Lab, right?
Yes,
And you sent that on March the 3rd, 2 days after the interview, correct? The forensic
I
interview.
have it as March the 2nd. When it was sent to the lab.
Okay, and so, yeah, are you looking at the sexual assault evidence submission certification?
It might have been when I sent it, they might have not received it because someone has to carry it. A carrier has to like bring it over there,
Okay,
the
so,
request.
so the submission that you signed was on 3/2/21?
According to my report, yes.
Okay, and so, in this particular case, you submitted this evidence. But before getting the results, you decided to go ahead and issue an arrest warrant, correct?
That's correct.
And you ultimately received the forensic serology report indicating negative results on June the 29th, 21, correct?
I never got them. A lot of times, if the case has already been dispositioned, someone else will attach it to the case.
Okay, so you're saying then, as a detective submitting evidence, you don't follow up either to see what the results were? You just leave the case out of
When it
it?
goes to trial, I know. But yeah, I mean, in this case, I've already made an arrest. I already turned in my prosecution guide to the district attorney's office.
Okay. You received the results on June 29th, 21. 3 months later, almost 4 months later.
Your Honors, counsel is testifying. She said she didn't receive the results.
Correct. You can ask the question. After she finishes the question, I'll hear the objection.
Now, you said you have the results, correct, for trial? You looked at
I
it.
personally don't have them. I was told the results.
Oh, because you didn't follow up?
I have over 700 cases. I don't get to follow up every case, every evidence that's brought in until it goes to trial.
Well, you knew this case is set for trial. You didn't think to look at the report to see the results?
I knew the results before trial begun. I'm saying I do not have the report.
You just don't have it with you?
Yes, I don't.
But you did include it with your case file?
Yeah, it gets attached later on.
Okay, and is it true, since now you're aware, the results were negative, they were not inconclusive like the state is making it appear?
Yeah, it's not surprising.
And so, yeah, but the results were negative on each of those items. And again, sometimes you get positive results, sometimes you get negative results, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and here, again, you didn't decide to wait 3 months or wait it out to see what those results are before issuing an arrest warrant, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you issued the arrest warrant on March the 7th, 2021.
Yes.
5 days after barely submitting the evidence to the lab to see what value it would have, you decided to go ahead and issue an arrest warrant because you had probable cause.
Yeah, that's correct. A lot of times the evidence doesn't show anything.
Well, you're just assuming.
From my training and experience, actually.
And you also presume he was guilty, right?
I believe he did. Obviously, I obtained an arrest warrant. I did, yes,
And one day later, he was arrested on the 8th, correct?
yes.
And in the meantime, you did not have the results yet of the forensic serology report.
Yes.
Okay, had it come back positive, then that would have been gold to you, right? Then he did it, right?
Your Honor, objection, argumentative.
Overrule.
Yeah, he probably would have split out.
Okay, but that would have been gold to you, right? That would have been of value, right?
DNA is always good.
Absolutely. So here, because it was negative, your comment is, oh, well, that's not surprising, right?
DNA is really rare to come back. Again, as I explained to the jury, it has to be something that has happened within a day or two for us to have a good chance of actually getting DNA back.
Okay, and how long have you been an officer?
12 years?
Okay, and in 12 years, I guess you haven't seen that many DNA cases?
What do you mean?
You're saying it's not very common. I've seen hundreds of cases with
Objection, Your
DNA.
Honor, counsel's testifying.
Sustained.
So you didn't decide to wait to see what the results were because you already presumed he was guilty, right?
Yes, I had enough probable cause to move forward with us.
And did you speak to her mom
Yes.
personally? Okay, and did the mom tell you that,
Objection, Your Honor, this is calling for hearsay.
not what she said, just the subject?
All right, let me hear the question and then I'll hear your objection.
That she had a history of not being truthful.
Your Honor, I'd object to hearsay as it's an out-of-court statement made by the mom.
All right, that'll be sustained.
You didn't inquire further as to what was maybe going on in that household with
mom
Gabby?
or with Gabby?
With
I
Gabby?
never talked to Gabby.
Okay, and so you wouldn't have an idea as to whether she had a motive to lie or not, right?
Based on this relationship with him being a family friend, it seems like she had a lot more to lose and to break up the family than to gain
Okay.
by making this up.
Okay, well, and that's your opinion without even knowing any dynamics about the family, right?
I'd object that that's argumentative.
Overrule.
Yeah.
So again, you're making another presumption, right?
Based on just other cases, very similar relationship. A lot of our cases involve a family member or somebody with close within the family.
How long did you spend with Gabby to get to know her?
I just told you I never talked to Gabby.
Okay, so you never talked to Gabby.
She was forensically interviewed.
How long had you known her mother, April? How much time did you spend with her?
I don't know the extent of our phone call.
So it was only a phone call?
Mhm.
How long did you get to know her father?
I haven't talked to her father.
How long did you talk to any of the other children?
I already told you I never talked to any of the children.
Okay, so you believe that what the complainant was true based on all the information that you were given? Correct?
Yes.
And in reality, you know nothing about this family? Correct?
If you're talking about like details of, the intricacies of her family, I knew just about the situation with how Brandon was connected.
Right, and that was never an issue that they knew each other, right?
Right, I mean, I don't go into like family history, if that's what you're referring to.
Well, in evaluating a case, before you make an arrest on a very serious offense, you should probably look further into the dynamics of this whole situation to
Your
see if it's
Honor,
even true,
I
correct?
object that it's counsel testifying and argumentative.
All right, if you'll rephrase your question.
In conducting your investigation, do you not believe that it's important to find out a little more about the family?
I think it's situational based.
Did you ever review any CPS records?
No.
So you know nothing about the history of Gabby either through CPS records, right?
I feel like that's irrelevant to her being sexually assaulted.
Well, I think if you had your,
Objection, counsel's testifying.
That will be sustained. If you want to rephrase your question.
yes. And so you didn't make any efforts to even look into the dynamic of the whole family, right?
No.
Or the child's credibility, right?
Again, I had no reason to not believe her.
We had no reason, but what reason did you have? Just that she repeated it several times?
No, coming forward with something to this extent is a child's worst nightmare. It's very hard to even come forward and say these things. I
Are
mean,
you-
if someone's talking about like explaining a consensual sexual act to a stranger, that's uncomfortable, but she's a 14-year-old and she had to explain this to multiple strangers. Yes.
Are you saying that you've never had a case where there had been false accusations and
No, I'm not saying
allegations?
I've never said that.
Because they do happen. You agree?
Yes.
Thank you. Pass the witness.
All right, state.
Just real briefly, Judge. So you said that there are cases where you have false allegations.
Yes.
Um,
Usually they consist of a motive. A lot of times it's a custody agreement. Somebody wants to stay with mom, but they get assigned with dad. Now they're saying dad did this to me, or something similar where there's red flags and there's something to gain.
So when you see cases where those red flags show up, do you file those with the DA's office?
No.
No further questions, Judge.
Any further questions?
Are you given information as to whether when a case is filed and later gets dismissed, do you get notified about those cases?
If a case gets dismissed?
Yes, due to lack insufficient evidence. They don't get back to you with what happened on your case?
Not usually.
Thank you. Pass the witness.
Any further questions?
Just one final question, Judge. When we were talking about some of the evidence, I said inconclusive. Defense counsel said negative. Are those the same thing, or how do you understand those to be?
Basically the same thing. It's not a positive.
No further questions, Judge.
Any?
Nothing further from this detective.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse from the state.
Excuse me.
All right, the rule has been invoked. That means you cannot discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state or the defense. Thank you.
Judge, can we have a quick break, please?
Just one moment.
Your Honor, at this point, the state rests.
All right, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is what's going to happen. We're going to come back on Friday at 9:30, which is tomorrow. So we'll be back tomorrow at 9:30. And at that time, we will conclude the case and both parties will have a chance to give you their closing arguments. All right, so there may be more witnesses. There may not be more witnesses, but I'll need you here at 9:30. Remember my previous rulings that you're not allowed to discuss any of the testimony that you've heard internally with yourself or amongst each other or with anyone else. You're not allowed to discuss anything about the case. Make sure your badges are visibly displayed. You're not to do any investigation work. You're not to watch anything. Everything that you need to know about this case is to come from inside this courtroom. Does everyone understand?
Yeah.
All right, we can go off the record. So tomorrow, no jurors are called up on Friday unless someone has specially ordered to have jurors up. So if you arrive at 9, there should be parking space available for you. All right. All right, everyone.